And a lot of it will depend on whether you pay careful attention to the first reading. So if you're paying attention to what Sean was reading, you understand where the sermon is going to, how it's going to focus. A person of distinction, we're told, a religious lawyer, at the promptings of the group, because they don't confirm, so they pick one of their own, okay? Flip a coin, whatever. And he asked Jesus a technical question. And the question is, what's the most important thing I can do in God's eyes? That's really what he's asking. Which is the greatest commandment to follow? And that's a question with a lot of baggage to it. Because it's sort of a backdoor way of saying, okay, what do I have to do that God sees me as important as I am? That's the point of what he's trying to say. There's no real desire to learn here. How does God see me as important or holy? Is it the clothing that I wear? Is it how much I donate to charity? Is it the way I act? Is it sophisticated? Can I quote any of the proper laws? I'm going to embarrass you for a second. You probably don't remember this. This was 2 years ago. Remember, they're not 10 commandments in the Hebrew Scriptures. Do you remember the exact number? Because I did tell you guys. You remember it was a large number. Biblical bingo. Those of you who remember, how many commandments in the law are there? And there are people.
613.
I knew Joe would know. Congratulations. Yeah, there's 613 specific commandments. All right, so stop complaining about 10. All right. So when he's asked this hypothetical, what's the most important of all these? Rank them in the power rankings. Who's going to go to the 4 major bowls? Okay? He, almost like a Sunday school answer, he quotes from the book of Deuteronomy. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. It's something every Jewish man and woman would know. And then what he does, instead of giving the person a chance to follow up question, he quotes from this very obscure passage in the book of Leviticus. And he says, oh yeah, by the way, you must love your neighbor as yourself. Now, Matthew doesn't give us pictures of the faces, so you have to use your imagination. They had to have had this deer in the headlights look when he responded to that. Because the odds are very few of them even would have recognized that passage or where the quote comes from. And no one had ever raised the stakes by saying, this is part of loving God. This is equivalent to the love of God. Leviticus chapter 19, of which Sean read a portion, is this list of, it's kind of like, there were a whole group of things that were put together, and they weren't mentioned in any of the other chapters of Leviticus, so it's all like thrown together in one chapter, whether they go together or not. The only thing I can equate it to is I've done this on exams when I was a student. You get to the last 10 minutes, you just write down everything you know in one paragraph to the question, and hoping that what you say, one of those sentences might be the answer. Now, those of you who did well in school can identify with that. Those of you who struggle in school, you might have known that's a strategy. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. You play the right teacher. So in this chapter, there's a lot of stuff about, well, how do you pay your servants? How do you offer sacrifice? How do you be a judge? How do you pick a right wife? All of this stuff is in there. And then this little obscure verse, also attached and thrown in, which is the last verse that Sean read. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And what Jesus is saying in no uncertain terms, call yourself a follower? Do we have to love God? Yes. Do we have to just love God? No. A loving relationship with God doesn't give you a free pass. It doesn't allow us to hate those who annoy us, whether they are a sister, a brother, a neighbor, or a parent. We remind ourselves that part of our understanding is that God is within the person. We are all created in God's image, and God truly became one of us in His incarnate Son. I was very lucky when I was a kid. He was a great parish priest. I sometimes wonder if I could ever live up to the type of priest he was. His name was Father Campo. And he was truly one who used to hammer away how much God loves us and how wonderful that is. And then he had this kind of twinkle in his eye, and he'd say, oh, and by the way, be careful, because of how much God loves us and how wonderful God is. And I never got what he was trying to say. And it's taken me many, many years to begin to understand that it's one thing to know that God loves us absolutely unconditionally. The that God has redeemed us and freed us from our own self-centeredness. He has made us one with him in covenant. All those are wonderful and important and true. But never forget, if love is a command and not just an emotion, then when the day comes when I give an account of my life before God, I'm going to be judged on how did I live that command? How did I love? Did I love others as myself? See, Jesus doesn't seem to say that being a liberal or a conservative is really going to ultimately be the final criteria of how you're estimated in his eyes. It's not going to have anything to do with the salary that I make or how well I preach or how much I donate to charity. It's not going to matter whether I am remembered as a great pastor or somebody thinks of me as a footnote in the history of any particular parish, or I'm not remembered at all. But what Jesus does teach without question and with great clarity is, when you stand before the Lord, you're going to be asked a simple question. Did you love God with all of your being? And the people in your lives who cross your lives, your spouse, your parents, your children, your friends, the people you work with, the people you associate with, the people who will just visit here in this church, do we love them as much as we love ourselves? Every person who crosses our path. And then go one step further. Do we even care for those who don't care for us? Do we love those who are enemies, whether they say so out loud or not? The people who don't like me, the people who wish I would leave, the people who wish you would shut up. A religious lawyer posed Jesus a question. What are the right words that I say, and what are the things that I need to do so that God knows I love him the most? And what Jesus answers very simply is, you know the answer. It's already been written in your heart. Love God with all that you are, and care for each other as much as you care for yourself. And I'm not talking emotion, all right? Emotion comes and goes. You know, last year in the confirmation class, I've used this line. You might remember when the discussion of love comes up, and love within commitment, love within relationship, that great line that Georgia said, when I asked, have you ever loved someone that did not respond? You remember the line that she said a year ago? Come on, when nobody was answering, come on guys, we're both in the 7th grade. And it's great wisdom to that, because we all have. Well, God does not respond to us in that way, but we do respond to each other in that way. So what's the greatest of commandments? What's the most important?